Michael Cohen unloading on Donald Trump, calling him a liar, a crook, a racist, and more. We will play the highlights, then we'll take a look at the political and legal ramifications of a huge day in Washington. Former federal prosecutor, he'll join us to take a look at how damaging this could all be for the President of the United States. And then we open up the phone lines for you, the viewer. Join our program, 888-765-2428. 38 RNN chat. The toll-free lines, they're open right now. Tell us what you think of Michael Cohen's testimony. Evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A lot of fireworks at the Michael Cohen hearings before the House Oversight Committee as Donald Trump's former attorney and fixer goes after his former boss. Now, I should tell you, for those of you who missed some of it, we're going to play extended chunks of those hearings today, and we'll do something unique here as well, and that is open the phone lines to you at home. They're open as we speak. You see the toll-free number right there. We want to know what you thought of what Cohen had to say. Obviously, there are certain believable issues when it comes to Mr. Cohen, but at the end of the day, did you believe what he had to say about our president, and just how substantial do you think this testimony was today? Now, in his opening statements, Cohen, he came out swinging.
That I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat.
And he was just getting started. Cohen, take a listen to where he went next.
When I say con man, I'm talking about a man who declares himself brilliant, but directed me to threaten his high school, his colleges, and the college board to never release his grades or SAT scores. As I mentioned, I'm giving the committee today copies of a letter I sent at Mr. Trump's direction, threatening these schools with civil and criminal actions if Mr. Trump's grades or SAT scores were ever disclosed without his permission. And these are under Exhibit 6. The irony wasn't lost on me at the time that Mr. Trump, in 2011, had strongly criticized President Obama for not releasing his grades. As you can see in Exhibit 7, Mr. Trump declared, "Let him show his records," after calling President Obama a terrible student.
Amazing. Cohen, he also spoke about the now infamous meeting at the Trump Tower between Donald Trump Jr. and the Russians. Take a listen.
Questions have been raised about whether I know of direct evidence that Mr. Trump or his campaign colluded with Russia. I do not. And I want to be clear, but I have my suspicions. Sometime in the summer of 2017, I read all over the media that there had been a meeting in Trump Tower in June of 2016 involving Don Jr. and others from the campaign with Russians, including a representative of the Russian government, and an email setting up the meeting with the subject line, "Dirt on Hillary Clinton." And something clicked in my mind. I remember being in a room with Mr. Trump, probably in early June of 2016, when something peculiar happened. Don Trump Jr. came into the room and walked behind his father's desk, which in and of itself was unusual. People didn't just walk behind Mr. Trump's desk to talk to him. And I recall Don Jr. leaning over to his father and speaking in a low voice, which I could clearly hear, and saying, "The meeting is all set." And I remember Mr. Trump saying, "Okay, good, let me know." What struck me as I looked back and thought about the exchange between Don Jr. and his father was, first, that Mr. Trump had frequently told me and others that his son Don Jr. had the worst judgment of anyone in the world, and also that Don Jr. would never set up any meeting of significance alone, and certainly not without checking with his father. I also knew that nothing went on in Trump world especially the campaign, without Mr. Trump's knowledge and approval.
I am sure that Donald Trump Jr. loved that piece of testimony. Now, once the questioning actually got started, ranking Republican Jim Jordan, he went directly after Cohen.
How long did you work for Donald Trump?
Approximately a decade.
10 years?
That's correct.
You said all these bad things about the president there in that last 30 minutes, and yet you worked for him for 10 years? All those bad things, I mean, if it's that bad, I can see you working for him for 10 days, maybe 10 weeks, maybe even 10 months. But you worked for him for 10 years. Mr. Cohen, how long did you work in the White House?
I never worked in the White House.
That's the point, isn't it, Mr. Cohen?
No, sir.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not, sir.
You wanted to work in the White House.
No, sir.
You didn't get brought to the dance.
Sir.
And now?
I was extremely proud to be personal attorney to the President of the United States of America. I did not want to go to the White House.
Now, after a few more Republicans teed off on Cohen and questioned why they were even having the hearing at all, Democrat Stephen Lynch of Massachusetts, he said this.
I want to talk about a low point. How about Mr. Papadopoulos pled guilty, Mr. Manafort convicted, pled guilty to 2 other charges, Mr. Gates pled guilty, Mr. Flynn pled guilty, Mr. Pinedo pled guilty, Mr. Van der Zwaan pled guilty, Mr. Kalimnik indicted for obstruction of justice. And for 2 years, you want to talk about an agenda, my friends on the other side of the aisle refused to bring any of these people up before the committee. So today, for the first day, we have one witness who voluntarily is coming forward to testify. Your side ran away from the truth, and we're trying to bring it to the American people.
Another thing that got a lot of attention today, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She made her debut at a big-time hearing, and I got to tell you, from my sense, I had some questions, but she acquitted herself far better than most of those asking questions. Here's the New York Democrat.
I want to ask a little bit about your conversation with my colleague from Missouri about asset inflation. To your knowledge, did the president ever provide inflated assets to an insurance company?
Yes.
Who else knows that the president did this?
Alan Weisselberg, Ron Lieberman, and Matthew Calamari.
And where would the committee find more information on this? Do you think we need to review his financial statements and his tax returns in order to compare them?
Yes, and you'd find it at the Trump org.
Then Michael Cohen gave his closing statement. I want you to take a listen.
I have acknowledged I have made my own mistakes, and I have owned up to them publicly and under oath. But silence and complicity in the face of the daily destruction of our basic norms and civility to one another will not be one of them. I did things and I acted improperly, at times at Mr. Trump's behest. I blindly followed his demands. My loyalty to Mr. Trump has cost me everything. My family's happiness, friendships, my law license, my company, my livelihood, my honor, my reputation, and soon my freedom. And I will not sit back, say nothing, and allow him to do the same to the country. Indeed, given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power. And this is why I agreed to appear before you today. In closing, I'd like to say directly to the President, we honor our veterans even in the rain. You tell the truth even when it doesn't aggrandize you. You respect the law and our incredible law enforcement agents. You don't villainize them. You don't disparage generals, Gold Star families, prisoners of war, and other heroes who had the courage to fight for this country. You don't attack the media and those who question what you don't like or what you don't want them to say. And you take responsibility for your own dirty deeds. You don't use your power of your bully pulpit to destroy the credibility of those who speak out against you. You don't separate families from one another or demonize those looking to America for a better life. You don't vilify people based on the God they pray to, and you don't cuddle up to our adversaries at the expense of our allies. And finally, You don't shut down the government before Christmas and New Year's just to simply appease your base. This behavior is churlish, it denigrates the office of the president, and it's simply un-American. And it's not you. So to those who support the president and his rhetoric, as I once did, I pray the country doesn't make the same mistakes that I have made or pay the heavy price that my family and I are paying.
All right. So with that, there were many additional questions raised here, and people who either believed or did not believe a word that Cohen had to say. So when we come back, we'll bring in a federal prosecutor to give us his take on what he heard today, the legal issues that Cohen raised, and what this could all mean in the case for the president. Then we will get to the phone calls. So you see the toll-free number. Let's bring it up there. There you go. Tell us what you thought of Cohen's testimony. Did you believe him? Did you not? You see the number right there on your screen. We'll be right back.